Good evening. As a courtesy to everybody, please turn off your cell phones. You know that announcement well, I'm sure. I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us for the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation's 36th annual meeting and the 2016 Village Awards ceremony that follows. I'm Art Levin, president of the Society, and I'll shortly convene the meeting for the purpose of conducting our organization's business. But first, I want to call on Alan Sperling, our Secretary and Treasurer, for confirmation that a quorum of GVSHP members are in attendance for the annual meeting and that notice of the annual meeting has been provided in accordance with our bylaws. Alan?
Mr. President, I'm pleased to confirm that we have a proper quorum and proper notice given.
Thank you, Alan. And I'll now call the 36th annual meeting of the GVSHP membership to order. I'd like to next introduce Mary Ann Arisman, a former president of the Society, a current trustee, and co-chair of the GVSHP nominating committee.
GVSHP's nominating committee is entrusted with the task of searching out new members for our Board of Trustees and confirming the continued engagement of current trustees whose terms is due for renewal. On behalf of my co-chair, Justine Leguizamo, and the whole nominating committee, it is now with great pleasure that I present the slate of trustees recommended by the committee to be voted on by all GVSHP members this evening. All dues-paying members received a bookmark when you entered to indicate your vote. When I call for the vote, please raise your voting bookmark in the air. I present to you the slate of trustees renewing for another 3-year term. These candidates have already served on the GVSHP Board of Trustees and are renewing their candidacy. For those who are here, please stand when I say your name. Elizabeth Eli, Catherine Schoonover, Marilyn Sobel, and F. Anthony Zunino, Tony Zunino. All in favor of this slate, please indicate by raising your bookmarks. Any against? The slate is approved. Thank you very much. Next, I am pleased to present 2 new candidates for a 3-year term with the GVSHP board. David Hottenroth is an architect who has worked on restoring many Greenwich Village homes. He is a member of the Greenwich Village Preservation Committee, GVSHP Preservation Committee, and he has served on our awards committee. Naomi Usher is a graphic designer and owner of Studio Usher. She has served on the benefit committee for several years and also serves on the membership and development committee and has been deeply involved in neighborhood preservation efforts, including those surrounding St. Vincent's Rudin redevelopment project. All in favor of this slate of new board members? Any against? The slate is approved. Thank you very much, and congratulations. I would also like to take a moment on behalf of the Board of Trustees and all GVSHP members to thank 2 long-term trustees who are now not renewing their terms. Penelope Barrow has served as a GVSHP trustee for over 25 years. Cynthia Penny has served for 9 years. We thank them both for their many years of dedicated service and contributions. And I turn it back to our president.
Be patient.
Don't trip on that.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I want to extend a special welcome to our new trustees, David and Naomi. And I want to thank all of the current and past GVSHP trustees, all of whom have been so instrumental in our organization's success and the pursuit of our mission. Now, some business that I hope won't put you to sleep. We have to approve some bylaws. The GVSHP bylaws were updated in January 2016 by the Board of Trustees, among other things, to comply with the New York State Nonprofit Revitalization Act as amended. However, one section requires the approval of the membership at this annual meeting. That section, Section 3.05, specifies that the lesser of 100 members, or 1/10 of the total number of members entitled to vote at a meeting of members, shall constitute a quorum at such meeting. I move the adoption of that section. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Yes.
What is the current membership?
About 1,400. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? The motion is approved. All of you, at least all members in attendance, have received a copy of the 2015 audited financial report and the membership report when you registered at the check-in desk for the meeting. If you have not received one, copies are still available at the desk outside. And Andrew Berman will elaborate on the financial report and the status of our membership in his remarks. I now invite our Executive Director, Andrew Berman, to the podium to present his annual report to the Society on our accomplishments for the past year. Andrew.
Thank you very much, Art and Marianne, and good evening to everyone. Welcome to our members, awardees, honored guests, and I want to extend a special welcome to City Council Member Corey Johnson, who's with us here tonight. We'll talk more about Corey a little bit later and some of the great work he's been doing with us, but I would like to thank our very generous co-hosts for the evening, the New School, and our wonderful awards committee for their terrific work in selecting this year's honorees from hundreds of worthy nominations. I'd also like to thank GVSHP's incredibly hardworking staff, and for those who are in here, if you can just raise your hand, Sam Moskowitz, who put together tonight's program. Sam, are you in here? Linnell Stevens, Sarah Bean Appman, Harry Bubbins, Chelsea Dowell, and Matthew Morwitz. They work around the clock incredibly hard to make everything that we do possible. And I'd like to extend a special acknowledgement to all the GVSHP trustees who are here tonight, whose generosity with their time and talent make what we do possible. We have some truly wonderful awardees tonight, but before that, it's my distinct pleasure to provide you with a review of GVSHP's activities and accomplishments over the past year. I think it's no exaggeration to say that this has been among the most challenging of times for GVSHP, with more threats to preservation than we have seen in decades. But I'm happy to report that our members have stepped up, supporting GVSHP like never before, providing us with the resources we need to continue our work in an ever tougher climate. One prime example was this past May when GVSHP staged its major annual benefit, our highly anticipated Spring House Tour. In spite of some rare, less than perfect weather, the tour was a tremendous success, our highest grossing benefit ever. Hundreds of tour goers got exclusive access to some of the most beautiful and historic houses, spacious lofts, incredible art collections, and imaginatively renovated homes in the village, the doors of which were generously opened by their owners. The event raised nearly a quarter of GVSHP's annual budget and was made possible by an incredibly hardworking committee, including chairs Cassie Glover and Kyung Choi Boards, and more than 130 volunteers and dozens of generous businesses and sponsors. This was just one of many forms of support GVSHP received over the past year. Membership support, which comprises about 70% of our annual income, continued to rise. More than 300 new members joined GVSHP last year, bringing in over $100,000 in new membership support. From 2001 to 2015, total membership support for the organization grew by nearly 1,100%. While the number of GVSHP members increased by almost 500%, greatly increasing GVSHP's capacity for education, research, and advocacy. New members come from a variety of sources, including our programming. This past year, GVSHP conducted 60 public programs attended by over 5,100 people, a nearly 25% increase over last year's already impressive numbers. Almost all of our programs are free and open to the public, with our exception of our members-only events. Programs this year included tours of local theaters, churches, and synagogues, lectures on Edna St. Vincent Millay and Woody Guthrie, and slideshows on topics ranging from East Village community gardens to West Village nightlife in the 1980s. We also continued our highly popular historic plaque program in partnership with the Two Boots Foundation. This past October, we added a plaque honoring James Baldwin to the front of his former home at 81 Horatio Street, which was attended by members of his family, the publisher of his writings, and artists and writers he inspired, including Fran Lebowitz. Last June, we added a plaque to honor the former home of Martha Graham's original dance company, and later this summer, we plan to unveil a plaque marking the former home and studio in NoHo of artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. Throughout the year, with the help of the GVSHP Brokers Partnership, we expanded enrollment in our continuing education program for real estate professionals, educating more brokers and realtors who work in our communities about the value of history and preservation. Given the critical role these professionals play in shaping our neighborhood, this education pays invaluable dividends. The GVSHP Broker Partnership also staged a very successful comedy night fundraiser in April, and in October they held a wonderful benefit concert at the Eldridge Street Synagogue with the Andy Statman Trio. Great. This coming Wednesday, the 29th, they'll be hosting a wine, cheese, and jazz garden party at the Jefferson Market Garden with tours of the historic library included. Of course, GVSHP's educational activities were not limited to adults. Over the past year, demand for GVSHP's children's education program grew as more schools across the 5 boroughs enrolled in the program, which serves children in grades 1 through 7, using in-class sessions and a tour of the village to teach about immigrant history, urban development, and 19th century life in New York, allowing us to cultivate the next generation of preservationists. More than half of the students enrolled in the program qualified for need-based scholarships from GVSHP, allowing them to participate for free. The program, like our general programming, is made possible by a combination of government and private grants, but the single largest source of support for these programs is membership contributions. So thank you, our members, for making this possible. GVSHP has also been expanding our social media presence to engage and mobilize a broader audience. In the past year, our Facebook reach has grown by nearly 50% and our Twitter following by nearly 25%, while the viewership of our YouTube page has grown by 30%. This includes nearly 7,000 views of the videos of our programs, which for the first time surpassed the number of in-person attendees, showing the value of making every one of our programs permanently available for viewing on the web. And today, I'm pleased to announce that we are launching GVSHP's Instagram account, starting with images of tonight's event. We hope you'll follow us. Yes? We hope you'll follow us, and please feel free to share and tag your own images with GVSHP and Village Awards. This is another great way for us to spread the word through pictures about what we value most about our neighborhood. Our website continues to attract users and to connect us to interested people and supporters from across the globe. In the past year, it drew well over 300,000 page views, connecting visitors near and far to information about our neighborhood's history, current preservation efforts, and ongoing events. Our blog, Off the Grid, which is added to almost daily, accounts for a large part of that viewership, and since its founding just a little over 5 years ago, has acquired an increasingly robust readership. Of its 1,400 posts, more than 165 have been viewed more than 1,000 times, and more than a dozen have been accessed over 5,000 times each. One of the most popular and necessary features on our website is our new Business of the Month program. Begun in late 2014, each month GVSHP selects an independently owned local business to highlight its special contributions to our neighborhood. Nominations come in from a broad cross-section of the public, selections are shared widely via social media, and winners can proudly post their selection in their store windows. Through this program, GVSHP aims to help store owners who are struggling, call attention to those who are succeeding, and increase patronage and support for all of our local small businesses. We've also been using our online presence as a tool to help local residents learn about what's going on every day in our neighborhoods and how to get involved. Our landmarks application webpage is the first of its kind in the city, providing invaluable information about every single public hearing application for a change to a landmarked building in our neighborhoods. It provides the history of the building, the proposed changes, when and where the application will be heard by the Community Board and the Landmarks Preservation Commission, and how you can give in-person, emailed, or written testimony before a decision is made. It tracks the application from first filing to final resolution and allows you to sign up for alerts to update you on all such developments. In the last year, this webpage has received nearly 30,000 page views from nearly 15,000 unique visitors, making this an incredibly valuable and widely used resource. Of course, GVSHP also carefully reviews every single one of these landmarks applications ourselves, and when appropriate, alerts our members and advocates to the Community Board and the Landmarks Preservation Commission for what we believe is the right outcome. In the past year, our Preservation Committee reviewed almost 100 such landmarks applications in nearly every corner of our neighborhood, ranging from storefront alterations to demolition and new construction. Our input and that of the public we help facilitate clearly impacted the outcome of many of these applications. A different kind of online tool which GVSHP introduced over the past year is our Historic Image Archive. Containing hundreds of photographs, etchings, drawings, and colored postcards, the collection's oldest images date from the early 19th century and the newest ones from the early 1970s. You can see the 9th Avenue elevated when it was up and the 6th Avenue L when it came down. Old department stores, churches, and hotels, pear trees and prisons, New Yorkers as varied as Peter Cooper and Montgomery Clift, and many, many pictures of Washington Square and the Washington Square Art Show over the years. While the archive's contents are concentrated in and around the Village and East Village, its range stretches across the 5 boroughs, with images easily accessible through our mapping tool. If you have not already, I hope you'll check it out. While not new, GVSHP's oral history collection was greatly expanded over the past year, adding 20 new subjects, including musician David Amron, filmmaker Jonas Makis, guitar impresario Matt Umanov, and photographer Marlis Momber. These interviews, available on our website, joined long-standing GVSHP oral histories with preservation pioneers such as Jane Jacobs and those involved with the creation of Westbeth, such as architect Richard Meyer. If you have not listened to or read them already, please do. They offer remarkable first-person insights into the history, culture, and development of our neighborhoods. In looking back over the past year, undoubtedly GVSHP's largest single area of focus was, and always is, our advocacy work. And this past year, we had no shortage of such work to do. On Gansevoort Street, we work closely with local community groups like tonight's awardees, Save Gansevoort, to push back against an outrageous plan to transform an iconic block in the meatpacking district, which GVSHP helped get landmarked in 2003. The initial plan was awful. Demolition of 3 buildings, outlandishly large and poorly designed additions to a 3rd set of buildings, and 2 oversized, out-of-place new structures. Gradually, the developer and the LPC scaled back and improved the designs, making them significantly more in keeping with their surroundings. But frustratingly, the Commission seemed more interested in accommodating the developer than with upholding its mandate to preserve and protect the history of this area. When the Commission told the developers to limit the height of any new construction to the size of previously existing buildings on the site and other loft-style buildings in the area, GVSHP and Save Gansevoort dug deep into historic building permits to prove the size of these buildings, to try to ensure the developer did not get an inch more than they were allowed. Here again, the LPC wavered. The size of the buildings were reduced, but were still significantly in excess of the limits the Commission itself previously stated the developer should abide by. This illustrates the ongoing challenges we face from a Landmarks Preservation Commission, which is increasingly permissive with developers in historic districts. Fortunately, in the case of the Gansevoort project, the story may not be over. The developer will likely seek a change in allowable uses for the site to make this plan financially feasible, a change only allowable with the consent of the City Council and the City Planning Commission after public hearings. So stay tuned. At a much earlier stage is a plan to rezone the 3-block-long St. John's Terminal site at West and Houston Streets to allow a 5-building, nearly 2 million square foot residential, hotel, and commercial and retail complex. The tallest of the new buildings would reach higher than the nearby Trump Soho and would together be more than 5 times the size. The city seems all too eager to accommodate the proposed changes, which would increase the size of the allowable development and the underlying value of the land tremendously. Currently, some public givebacks are being offered. Money to repair the crumbling nearby Pier 40 and its public playing fields, and the inclusion of some much-needed affordable housing at the complex. But this is not nearly enough to justify the enormous windfall the developer would receive, nor the huge impact the project and proposed changes would have. So GVSHP is pushing to have the scale of the project, especially its vast amounts of traffic-generating destination retail, rethought, and to have any proposals linked to much-needed and long-overdue landmark protections for the last remaining section of our proposed South Village Historic District, which the city thus far has refused to landmark. And by the way, I here also want to just cite and thank Councilmember Corey Johnson, who's been working on this with us for well over a year. And you know, we're not there yet, but we're very optimistic that we will be. We're also pushing for protections for the waterfront blocks of Greenwich Village, where state legislation passed in 2013 allows up to 1.5 million square feet of air rights from the nearby Hudson River Park to be moved inland, which could vastly increase the size of allowable development in this area. 2 recent proposals for new construction on Jane Street in the heart of the Greenwich Village Historic District also speak to the new kinds of threats our neighborhood faces. At 8589 Jane Street, a plan to convert 2 commercial buildings into a single-family mega mansion include adding 2 shockingly out-of-place glass and concrete towers, rising to 80 to 90 feet above this residential street. And at 11 Jane Street, a developer proposes to knock down a 2-story garage and replace it with a 95-foot-tall apartment building, which looks more like a 1950s office building that would loom over its more humanly scaled and designed neighbors. Both are expected to come before the Landmarks Preservation Commission later this month. GVSHP will be using all its resources to fight hard against their approval. What the Landmarks Preservation Commission does here will say a lot about just how safe areas of our neighborhood which we thought were protected really are. One area where we have seen some progress, albeit only after considerable pushing, has been in recognizing and protecting landmarks connected to LGBT history, which seems all the more relevant in light of the tragic events of the last few days. This year, Julius's Bar, also one of tonight's awardees, one of New York City's oldest bars and its oldest gay bar, was listed on the state and national registers of historic places through the efforts of the LGBT Historic Sites Project, with whom GVSHP works closely. GVSHP had gotten the bar determined eligible for listing in 2012 based upon the 1966 sit-in, pictured here, which took place there, which helped undo discriminatory laws which at the time made gay bars in effect illegal and subject to closure and harassment. GVSHP is pushing to also have the building landmarked, which would help ensure its historic features are preserved. The family of Fred W. McDarrah, who took this and so many other iconic pictures of life and history being made in the village in the mid-20th century, also generously donated to GVSHP the rights to sell a limited run of prints of the image, which raised considerable funds to support our work. And now the Stonewall Inn is also poised to become the first site ever made a national park or monument based upon LGBT history, an effort GVSHP supported. This follows GVSHP's successful fight in 2015 to get the Stonewall landmarked, and in 1999 to get it listed on the state and national registers of historic places, both firsts for a site based upon LGBT history. Even as we made progress on this front, at City Hall there were concerted efforts to turn back the clock on preservation. Intro 775, the landmarks drop-dead deadline bill, suddenly resurfaced at the end of May. Claiming to make the landmarking process more transparent and predictable, Intro 775 was put forward by the real estate industry to make avoiding landmarking easier for powerful and well-connected developers. GVSHP helped lead the charge against this pernicious measure, turning out hundreds at the City Council hearing last year. In light of this backlash, the Council removed the most dangerous piece of the bill, a 5-year moratorium on reconsideration of any site for landmark designation which didn't meet the deadlines, during which time demolition could proceed unimpeded. But the 1 to 2 year deadlines remained in the bill, deadlines which more than half of our city's landmark properties had failed to meet. And if designation did not take place in time, the sites would be automatically removed from consideration and demolition permits could be issued. Fortunately, GVSHP and other preservationists found out at the 11th hour that the Landmarks Preservation Commission can in fact get around, if they choose, the bill's rigid timeframes by decalendaring and recalendaring a site, thus starting the 1 to 2 year clock over again and avoiding the building or neighborhood falling to the wrecking ball. But this is far from an ideal solution, and it was deeply disappointing that more than 2/3 of the City Council voted in favor of the measure, in spite of overwhelming public opposition. But we were heartened by the strong and passionate support we received from the 10 council members who voted no. And I'm happy to report that that includes all 3 of our local city council members, Rosie Mendez, Margaret Chin, and Corey Johnson. We owe a special debt of gratitude to council members Johnson and Mendez, who not only stood by us, but joined us on the steps of City Hall to urge their colleagues to vote no on 775 unless it was amended, and worked hard with us to try to change or improve the measure. Their leadership and advocacy makes the incredibly difficult environment we face at City Hall from both the mayor and the council a little bit easier, and we thank them for it. Intro 775 was not the only way the real estate industry tried to undermine preservation this past year, nor was it the only case in which we were able to push back with significant results. In September, the Real Estate Board of New York issued a report claiming that landmarking accelerated the loss of affordable housing in neighborhoods. Ironic, coming from an entity which has campaigned tirelessly for unfettered development aimed at the highest end of the economic spectrum. But rather than just pointing out the irony of REBNY's claims, GVSHP teamed up with affordable housing advocates and the actual researcher behind the data REBNY used as the source for their claim to rebut their false and misleading contentions about landmarking's effect. What REBNY hoped would be a press cycle touting their study and tarnishing the image of preservation turned into a story about how the researcher behind the work, preservationists, and affordable housing advocates all refuted REBNY's bogus assertions. Thank you very much. Over the past year, we also continued to face frustration from the mayor's refusal to accept our rezoning plan for the University Place Broadway corridors, where 300-foot-tall towers with no affordable housing are not only allowed but encouraged. This past winter, hundreds of us were joined by local elected officials in calling upon the city to move ahead with GVSHP's rezoning plan for the area, which would put in place reasonable height limits while adding incentives or requirements for affordable housing in new developments, which is supposedly the top priority of the mayor. But the city refused to budge, and instead a 280-foot-tall condo tower is rising on the Bowlmore site at University Place and 12th Street. But this isn't the end of the story. GVSHP has identified more than a dozen other potential development sites in the area and scores of units of affordable housing that could be created if our rezoning plan went through. The mayor's response? Claiming that no other potential development sites really exist in the area and thus no rezoning is warranted. Unfortunately, in the past months, we've discovered that 2 of the sites GVSHP identified as potential development sites are in fact moving ahead, in spite of the city's assertion. The former hotel at Broadway and 11th Street has been purchased for $100 million, making development, quite possibly high-rise development, a strong likelihood. And plans have just been filed to replace the lovely cast-iron building at 827 Broadway with a 290-foot-tall office tower. But we are not giving up, and we will not abandon this part of the village, which is uniquely lacking in landmark protections or adequate zoning protections. We will use these cases to call the city out on their hypocrisy and their dishonesty about the threats to this neighborhood, and we will demand action to protect our neighborhood's special character. Some of that is already taking place behind the scenes, but expect to hear more about some very public steps we will be taking soon, for which we will need your help and participation. We did get the mayor to move considerably on his plan to roll back hard-fought-for neighborhood height limits. The Zoning for Quality and Affordability Plan was introduced last year and immediately came under fire from GVSHP and groups citywide for gutting local zoning protections while offering little in return. GVSHP organized press conferences with city council members and issued reports showing how the proposed changes would likely lead to no increase in affordable housing production, just taller buildings in residential neighborhoods. Before its final passage by the City Council, we got many of the worst elements of the proposal removed. In the Far West Village, the height limits we secured over the last 10 years have remained more or less intact. In the East Village, we kept most of the zoning protections and height limits we had fought for, covering most of the area, though in some parts of the neighborhood, those height limits were lifted by 15 feet for new developments that contain just 20% affordable housing. Albeit this is down considerably from the 25-foot height increase the mayor was seeking. While there are many cases like this where we blocked or reduced the impact of proposed new anti-preservation policies, there were some wonderful cases where we just plain won. Earlier this year, we finally got the 200-year-old Federal-era house at 57 Sullivan Street designated a New York City landmark, something GVSHP had been fighting for since 2002. Believe it or not, this house was actually first considered for landmark designation in 1970, but the proposal was scuttled the first time, making this the end of a nearly half-century wait. This was actually part of a broader victory by GVSHP and preservationists, since 57 Sullivan Street was one of nearly 100 sites which had been under consideration for landmark designation for more than 5 years, that the city initially proposed to drop from consideration without a hearing or any final decision. GVSHP and our allies vociferously protested the plan, arguing instead that these sites should all get a fair public hearing, their day in court, and a final decision. The city agreed, to their credit, and more or less adopted our plan in its entirety. And it was out of this that 57 Sullivan Street was landmarked along with 30 other properties across the 5 boroughs, some of which had been waiting as long as 50 years for designation. This designation was especially sweet for us because it has been a special part of GVSHP's mission to document and preserve federal-style houses in Lower Manhattan, those built in the earliest days of our republic, roughly between 1790 and 1830. GVSHP took the occasion of this designation to survey all the federal-era houses we've helped get landmarked over the past 20 years, and this spring issued a report documenting each and every one. Since 1999, I'm proud to say GVSHP has been able to help get 136 of these houses throughout Lower Manhattan landmarked, included in historic districts, or listed on the state and national register of historic places. GVSHP will continue to advocate for the preservation of these houses, which are typically the first and only buildings ever constructed on their sites. Speaking of the South Village, another sweet victory came just a few weeks ago when the scaffolding finally came down and restoration work was completed on 43 McDougal Street. For nearly 10 years, GVSHP has been fighting to get this landmarked 1846 house at King Street restored. A disinterested owner allowed the abandoned corner structure to rot for years, attracting mold, vermin, and vagrants, threatening the safety and well-being of the historic structure and its neighbors. GVSHP had pushed the city to take legal action against the owners to repair and maintain the building. After considerable pressure, the owner sold, and a new owner promised to restore the building, to which we responded with cautious optimism. We supported their application to the Landmarks Preservation Commission to make minor changes and bring the building back to its original charming glory. And now, after nearly 2 years of work, 43 McDougal Street once again shines as a lovely historic gem. Perseverance and a little bit of faith ultimately paid off. Finally, I can't help but note that this year marked the 100th anniversary of the birth of Jane Jacobs, a woman whose life and work inspires much of what we do at GVSHP. Jane was, of course, very special to us at GVSHP. She was a longtime member of our Board of Advisors, and she generously conducted an oral history with us. In 2006, after she died, we got the street outside her home on Hudson Street renamed Jane Jacobs Way in her honor and co-hosted the public celebration of her life in Washington Square Park. On May 5th of this year, what would have been her 100th birthday, we held a panel discussion on her impact and legacy with experts in the field. But perhaps most importantly, we work every day to try to live up to Jane Jacobs' ideal of a diverse, healthy community and city that preserves its history, values small businesses, and promotes grassroots rather than top-down planning. Spurred on by Jane's vision, we fought hard for and secured landmark designation of more than 1,100 buildings and contextual rezonings of nearly 100 blocks of our neighborhood. We regularly promote our local small businesses, and every day we connect the public to the process of shaping the future of their communities. With all that's going on in the city now, it seems as though Jane Jacobs' bright vision is needed more than ever. We at GVSHP fight every day to not only keep that legacy alive, but to try to extend it into our present and our future. But we can't do it alone. So thank you to all of you, our members and supporters, for working with us to celebrate what we love about our neighborhoods and to try to make them even better. I hope you'll stay with us tonight to enjoy the rest of this wonderful evening and stay with GVSHP as we work hard to preserve and protect our neighborhood in the coming year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Just a brief announcement for the trustees who are in the audience. Our meeting after the award ceremony will be through that door in the green room, so we'll gather there after the awards ceremony is over. I'd like to now ask if any member of the society has any new business to propose for the annual meeting. I see no hands, so I'd now like to ask for a motion to adjourn the annual membership meeting. I have a motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Now I'd like to introduce our host for the 2016 awards ceremony. Bob Holman is a poet, an activist who has dedicated his career to advance the art of poetry. He's been involved in more poetry projects and organizations than I could possibly mention, but I'll mention a few. The St. Mark's Poetry Project, the New Yorican Poets Cafe, Bowery Arts and Science, and the Bowery Poetry Club. Bob has won dozens of awards, including a 2011 Village Award winner. Ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure, Bob Holman.
So thanks, Art, and thanks, Marianne and Andrew. That was more than a report. That was kind of like a radio station for utopia, you know. I like it. I'll listen to it. Okay, it's 2016, if you're keeping track, and this year the Awards Committee of the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation is going to recognize 7, count them, 7 Village Award recipients, chosen from over 120 nominations that we received from the public. Tonight, we are very pleased to recognize an East Village-based poet who has been referred to as the keeper of the multicultural flame and flavor of downtown Bohemia since the early 1960s, and is also known as the only paid heckler in New York City. We'll recognize a family-owned 89-year-old Greenwich Village bookstore, one of the last of its kind that has evolved over the decades to survive not only the wave of bookstore closings, but to thrive in a global community. An amazing interior renovation of a beautiful East Village theater that is one of the city's very few interior and exterior landmarks. A jazz club on West 10th Street that for over 20 years has nurtured emerging and established musicians and has become a mecca for jazz fans and artists from around the world. A Greenwich Village bar that played an instrumental role in the gay civil rights movement of the 60s, and a grassroots organization formed just last year to fight out-of-scale development on the Gansevoort Market Historic District. Our awardees reach across geography, just as long as they're downtown, play a wide variety of important roles in the lives of our neighborhoods, and achieve excellence in their service to our communities. I'm excited. Are you? All right, okay, we'll get to it. But before we get to the presentations, I'm going to do that poem that I threatened to do, which is a poem that is published in the Greenwich Village Stories book, a book published by GVSHP, and which commercial are available for purchase outside. It's a wonderful book, and in it you'll find this poem for the village, which actually mentions the word pulse that has taken on a new meaning in our world. And that's what language will do, you know. Language predicts the future, and language keeps the pulse of morning continued in all senses of the word. It's called The Village. I live in the village. Not just any village, not just every village. Where the city becomes a village, that's my village. Where the intercontinental becomes the neighborly experiential, that's my village. Uptown, downtown, low down, no town, that's the home sweet hometown. The village is where I live. Jane Jacobs is my patron saint. She lived it with her apron paint. She made the stuff that's too obvious to see the definition of reality. A mix, a mess, a mishigas. Some trees and cement, some mental floss. Let ideas drip like faucets, honey trees grow in bedroom closet. So as you walk down these concrete paths, making your tantric plans to evanesce the globe, always centered on this place's energy rocket, why that's simply the pulse of living here. All the lands and all the peoples and all the dreamboats behind the blinking windows of these stacked buildings, the population froths in imagination syncopation. Utopic and grand, elegantly funked and plastered. It's a village you all are living in, all the way down, hometown, low down, mighty squat humanness. The village is where I live. You too. Okay, now we get into the real business, the humanness of us all. Our first awardee of the night is the East Village Meat Market, which I've always called Baczynski's. I don't know about you. Julian Baczynski, his founder, came to the U.S. in 1949, opened his first store on Avenue B and 10th Street in 1955. He opened the East Village Meat Market in 1970, across the street from Veselka. How do you do that? At the time, the neighborhood had a large Ukrainian and Polish population who were happy to have a store that featured the foods they'd grown up with. Mr. Baczynski is now 94 and has been a steadfast supporter of St. George's Ukrainian Church on East 7th, single-handedly supports an orphanage back in Ukraine. Today, the mix of customers at the East Village Meat Market is about 25% Ukrainian, 10% Polish, and the rest of us, the East Village denizens. But the store continues as a de facto community center for Ukrainian and Polish customers, particularly around Christmas and Easter holidays. Orthodox Easter is the busiest time of the year. Customers travel from far-flung areas to procure the traditional food needed for the celebrations. During this period, the smokers are running 24/7, and the store is packed. One of the advantages of being able to host tonight is that I got taken on a tour of the backroom smokers. See if you can talk your way into that. The store is known for its smoked meats and sausages. The smell of the smoked meats permeates the store. It's indescribable and intoxicating. Get high on that smoke. The store uses 5 large German machines from the 50s, including a meat grinder, a slicer, a mixer, a chopper, and a sausage maker. And that's only the first 7 days of Christmas. The first step in the sausage-making process is to cure the meat for 5 to 7 days. After that, it's ground, garlic and pepper, and secret ingredients are added, which I don't even know. It's also stuffed into natural casings, an art in itself, and finally the meat is smoked in the store's 2 floor-to-ceiling smokers, which use hickory chips. Then they go into the cooling box, brought to the front of the store to be sold. This process is even more authentic than what they're doing in Poland, because the current regulations there require that preservatives be added, but GVSHP has kept the preservatives out of our sausages. I want to thank Andrew and everybody else. Now, the hams that are cured here are sourced from small family-owned farms that pay attention to the nutrition, exercise, and living conditions afforded to the animals. GVSHP is proud to recognize East Village Meat Market for 46 years of providing an unparalleled array of food products and maintaining a tradition of old-world service right in the East Village. Mr. Baczynski, yay! And it's delicious. And there's vegan stuff in there, too. There's kasha and more kasha. Mr. Baczynski was unable to accept the award tonight in person, so accepting the award is the incredible manager of the store since the 80s. Please welcome Andrew Ilnicki, please, to the stage. A true hero of the Lower East Side.
I would like to say thank you to the committee for giving us this award, and also say thank you to loyal customers for supporting the business for so many years. Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
I see you soon. And there's a huge party there right after the ceremony tonight. There's going to be bigos, and there's going to be kielbasa and kasha. Okay. Well, the poet that I mentioned before is coming up here next. Steve Cannon is his name. The Professor is what he's called. Steve Cannon has experienced many lives and adventures, and that he doesn't mind telling you about it either. including the fact that it all started in Nolens, New Orleans, where he was the youngest of 8 children. Influenced by his family's penchant for storytelling, recitation, and music, he's always pursued writing and cultural endeavors. When Steve arrived in New York in the early 60s, his only interest was becoming part of the downtown scene where writers, artists, musicians, dancers, photographers, those expressing their artistic visions would gather and exchange ideas. He's lived in the East Village ever since, over the years mixing it up with such legendary figures as Norman Mailer, Miles Davis, Cecil Taylor, Leonard Bernstein, Charlie Parker, Leroy Jones, a.k.a. Amiri Baraka, Gregory Corso, Allen Ginsberg, David Henderson, Henry Threadgill, E.L. Doctorow, and a lot of people who don't want their names mentioned here tonight. Steve has been instrumental in the founding of many of the Lower East Side's and East Village's signature cultural institutions, including the Charlie Parker Jazz Festival, the Lower East Side Arts Festival, the Howl Festival, of which he was the Poet Laureate, and the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. But Steve is perhaps most closely associated with a Gathering of the Tribes, an arts and cultural organization dedicated to excellence in the arts from a diverse perspective. Tribes was located for many years in Steve's apartment, gallery, and gathering space on 3rd Street and Avenue D in a historic Greek Revival house built by the founder of The Nation magazine, Hamilton Fish. The literary manifestation of this group is the Gathering of the Tribes magazine, an eclectic multiculti zine currently in its 15th edition with global influence and distribution. As their website states, Tribes was conceived as a venue for underexposed artists, as well as a networking center and locus for the development of new talent. The formation of Tribes was inspired by the thriving artistic community in and around the Lower East Side, poetry at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, which gave birth to the spoken word movement, and of course the Stoop, the workshop that Steve and I ran there at his pad, performances and plays at the Living Theater, activist art at Bullet Space, the Squatter's Domain, and hundreds of artists who want to find a place and develop their voice in their medium and a place in which their work might be appreciated. That would be Steve's place, where he is the only acknowledged blind gallery owner in New York City. Steve is currently working on publishing the Tribes Anthology, and it's going to be the focus of an upcoming PBS documentary. Tracy is here with him tonight, who's working on that. So, on behalf of GVSHP, not so good with the acronyms, I am honored to present Professor Steve Cannon with a 2016 Village Award for his lifelong commitment to the art of poetry and his contributions to East Village cultural organizations, including a Gathering of the Tribes. And coming up with him is the wonderful journalist Sarah Ferguson, who nominated Steve for this prize. Come on up here, Professor and wonderful journalist Sarah Ferguson. Welcome to center stage, Steve. You know, it was the artist David Hammonds who turned Steve's couch into one of the world's greatest art pieces, which Steve managed to sell twice. Here you are, right in front of you.
Right here? Yeah. Number one, I'd like to thank Sarah Ferguson for thinking about the blind guy without my knowledge having nominated me for this award. And more than that, I would like to thank the committee and all the members and all the people who's part of this great organization, which is doing fabulous work. Give them a big hand. Mr. Holman mentioned why I started Tribes and what Tribes is all about. Is that what Tribes has always been a home for any artist, any race, any color, any ethnic group who's worthy and should be celebrated. So many young people are told by their parents when they say they want to make art, be a doctor, be a lawyer. And Tribes has always been the place to encourage artists to do whatever they want. And what makes Tribes happen is the artists themselves. And thank you.
You got it, buddy. Thank you so much. Here's the way you go. You got it right here. Professor Steve Cannon. Truly a hero of downtown. Our next awardee has been a vital part of Greenwich Village for almost 90 years. The Strand. The Strand Bookstore is a family-owned business founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass as a used bookstore on the world-renowned Book Row. The Strand remains one of the last remnants of Book Row, which as early as 1890 was known as the location for bookstores in town. And its heyday consisted of 48 bookstores along 4th Avenue from Astor Place to Union Square. The Strand was expanded by Ben's son, Fred, who moved the store to its current location at Broadway and East 12th Street in 1957. Fred still works at the store with his daughter, Nancy. Today, the Strand sells not only used books, but recent releases, rare books, and has the largest selection of art books in New York City. Its 4 floors hold over 2 million books for sale over how many miles? Thank you. Its web business ships orders around the world. In addition to selling books, the Strand holds 6 events a week, hosts tours for children visiting its fabulous children's department, works on set designs for theater and film, and even assembles personal libraries for clients. By works on set designs for theater and film, that means if you're doing a film about somebody, you just order the library from the Strand and they deliver it, you know. GVSHP is honored to present the Strand Bookstore with the 2016 Village Award for its 89 years as a family-owned bookstore, a beloved neighborhood institution, and an international mecca for passionate book buyers, sellers, readers, and browsers. Accepting the award are Strand owners Fred and Pat Bass and their daughter, Nancy Wyden. Come on up. Okay. I might get a job out of this, folks.
I've worked at this bookstore since I was a kid, 13 years old. I was born on 17th Street, and I lived on 15th Street for years, and then on 8th Street in Tompkins Park. And I've worked in the area ever since, except for 2 years in the Army. This has been my neighborhood and my life and my whole world. And I want to thank this organization for giving us this honor and this great introduction we got here. My God, that is beautiful. We've got to copy it and steal it from him. That's something or another.
We can publish it. We can go into the business.
Okay. But thank you all for attending, and we really appreciate everybody being here. Go ahead.
My dad and I feel that the village, as the epicenter of writing and artistic community, needs to have a strong bookstore, and that's why my family is dedicated to continuing it. Of course, we had our share or hordes of developers knocking at our door. My dad got to work for his dad for 37 years, and I am so honored to have worked with my dad for 30 years. I have with me my 3 kids. They're not shy. I have one over there. Could be better behaved. And as a full-time working mom, and I have a husband who has a crazy profession, people ask me all the time, how do I do it? And I always say, well, I'm not winning any awards. So tonight, thanks to you, I can no longer say that.
That's terrific, Nancy. Thanks. Congratulations. Really wonderful. Guys, you all deserve these awards so much. Thank you so much. The family that reads together. Okay, our next award recognizes an amazing interior restoration of a building located at 12th Street and 2nd Avenue, both an interior and exterior landmark. In the first few decades of the 20th century, a stretch of 2nd Avenue in the East Village was referred to as the Jewish Rialto because of the many thriving Yiddish language theaters there. In 1925, developer Louis N. Jaffe, I said developer and nobody booed. That's because Jaffe Art is winning the award here for being a decent developer. You know, even an artistic and aesthetic sensibility. Built a theater, Louis N. Jaffe built a theater devoted to the work of Maurice Schwartz, a Yiddish-speaking actor of such renown that he was often referred to simply as Mr. 2nd Avenue. Jaffe hired the theater architect Harrison Wiseman to create the stunning neo-Moorish Jaffe Art Theater at 189 2nd Avenue. You all know this theater. The theater, which was listed in both the New York State and National Registers of Historic Places in 1985 as the Yiddish Art Theater, and after decades of use as a Yiddish and later off-Broadway theater, the building was converted to a cinema in 1991. Several years ago, it became clear that the ornate plaster ceiling of the interior landmark auditorium was deteriorating, and the owners undertook an extensive restoration. CTA Architects, a New York City-based architectural firm specializing in historic preservation, restoration, rehabilitation, and new design, was brought on to complete the project. The work included the restoration of the main auditorium's ornamental plaster ceiling and dome. Above the ceiling, the plaster panels were suspended by wires or thin cables to structure that needed to be reinforced for safety reasons, as well as to ensure the integrity and longevity of the ceiling itself. The architects researched possible solutions and specified a liquid polymer product containing shredded fiberglass. Are you kidding me? That was applied to the top surface of the ceiling to improve its cohesion and rigidity, and also for health purposes. Some ornamental ceiling panels were removed, reinforced, cleaned, and reset. Damaged and missing panels were replaced and in-painted, a process where missing panels are painted to match the surrounding existing panels. The ceiling's iron hanging structure was reinforced, and the central dome was restored and repainted. GVSHP recognizes property owners Reading International, heir to the Reading Railroad, and CTA Architects for their exquisite interior restoration of one of New York's great landmark public spaces and most cherished cultural touchstones. Accepting the Village Award for the Jaffe Theater restoration are Scott Roseman from Reading International and Tamara Talbert of CTA Architecture. Please come on up here, Scott and Tamara. Next time you're in the theater, look up as well as look at the screen, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for this honor. No project like this could be done without having a knowledgeable and cooperative owner like Reading International and the Village East City Cinemas, who were able to close down the space for the duration of the project. Thank you to our consultants, Jablonski Building Conservation and Robert Silman Associates. A big thank you to our amazing contractor, Evergreen Architectural Arts, who made this project run so smoothly and did such a beautiful job. CTA restored the cast stone facade at the theater a few years back, and we were extremely proud to be given the opportunity to work on the interior as well. If you haven't already, I recommend that you go and watch a movie at the Village East and enjoy this wonderful interior landmark space. Thank you.
I want to thank the executives of Reading International for financing this project. It was a very long, painful project, and being a movie theater, you can imagine to lose your main auditorium for over a year was quite painful. But I want to thank our CEO, Alan Cotter, our president, Robert Smerling, and of course, none of this would have happened without the great work of CTA and Evergreen. And I want to thank our project manager from Reading International, Robert Stevenson. Thank you.
Beautiful job.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a beautiful job. And they show good movies too there, you know. So you can just enjoy the entire ambiance, even in the dark. You can feel that ceiling. Okay, on to jazz, right? What's the name of the jazz club? Oh, you guys. Why don't you get up here and I'll sit down there? The name may imply a diminutive stature, but they have had an outsized impact upon jazz in Greenwich Village and beyond. Small's Jazz Club is located at 183 West 10th Street and has become a mecca for jazz enthusiasts, owned by Spike Wilner and Mitch Borden. Mitch opened the club in '94 as a BYOB place for jazz lovers, motivated by the love of jazz, not necessarily profit. Of course, I think in that world it doesn't go hand in hand very often. Only poetry can outdo it. The club closed in 2002, reopened in 2004 with Mitch as the manager. Spike and Mitch eventually became the owners and managers in 2011. Smalls live streams every performance for free over their website, maintain an extensive archive of every performance from the club going back to 2007. The archives are accessible by subscription, with the proceeds shared by the club and the artists whose recordings are accessed. Smalls is so there's a model for how to get music to people. Pay the musicians. Smalls has helped nurture and further the careers of popular jazz musicians such as Brad Meldau, Kurt Rosenwinkel, Chris Potter, and Peter Bernstein, among many, many others. The partners opened a companion venue nearby called Mesro, which is similar to Smalls but solely dedicated to piano jazz. Spike and Mitch's passion for jazz is clear in every aspect of their management, and they clearly appreciate that jazz is an essential element of Greenwich Village history. The operation of their business is fundamentally about the music. They're extremely proud and aware of their role in maintaining and sharing that history while being part of that tradition. GVSHP is thrilled to present Smalls Jazz Club with the 2016 Village Award for becoming a great incubator for live jazz in the Village, providing invaluable live streaming, performance archive, and revenue sharing with their audience, with their artists, and enabling us to be their audience. So here, accepting the 2016 Village Award, are Spike Wilner and Mitch Borden. Smalls Jazz Club.
What a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much, and to the Society for giving us this very special honor. And Mitch and I have always maintained that jazz music has been an integral part of Greenwich Village's historical scene, and from the very early days, Barney Josephson and the first integrated club in New York City on down here, Greenwich Village on Waverly. And Smalls continues in that tradition of just presenting music every night of the week, and now with Mesro, the same thing. And also now that we're reaching a international audience through our live stream every night, people all over the world are, even though we have 60 seats in Smalls, it seems to be thousands and thousands of people watching. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for this great honor. Let me pass you to Mitch Borden, founder of Smalls.
Thank you, everyone. I'm honored and grateful to uphold the tradition in the village for supporting jazz and presenting jazz. It's been a long tradition, and we're right in the epicenter of it, and it's such a great location, so I'm actually proud of the village for supporting us back again, and thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Congrats, guys. Beautiful work. Thank you, man. Love your place. Yeah. Great place, Smalls Jazz Club. It would be Julius's Bar at Waverly and 10th Street. Located in a 190-year-old building, the ground floor of which has been a bar since 1864. One of the oldest continuously operating bars in New York City. It's been called Julius's since the 1920s. During Prohibition, it was a speakeasy, was frequented by many of the jazz and literary greats of its time. Julius has served as a predominantly gay clientele since the 50s, and it's one of the oldest gay bars in New York City. The interior of Julius's is a virtual time capsule, entirely intact from the early 20th century, with its carved wooden bar, stools and seats made from wooden barrels and casings from long-shuttered New York City breweries. Julius's supports many charities, include the American Red Cross, AIDS Walk New York, Bailey House, and St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Now, Julius's claimed a unique role in civil rights on April 21st, 1966, when 3 activists from the Mattachine Society decided to challenge prohibitions on gay bars and other gathering spaces for gays by openly declaring themselves to be gay. They told the bartender, who, of course, said, "Why are you telling me?" "Because I already know that. Look around you." And they said, "No, we are gay and we are asking to be served at the bar." And that triggers it, folks, because at the time the bar could and often was closed down simply for knowingly serving gay people. The men were refused service because they had demanded this. And in a moment caught on film by Village Voice photographer Fred W. McDara, covered by the New York Times, among others, the sip-in, as it was called, led to a successful challenges of these discriminatory state regulations a full 3 years before the Stonewall riots. The bar continues to celebrate its history with monthly Mattachine parties. Under the ownership of Helen Buford and her husband, Julius's has supported efforts to landmark the bar and get it listed on the state and national registers of historic places. This April, on the 50th anniversary of the sip-in, as the 66 civil disobedience action was called, heretofore mentioned, Julius's was listed on these historic places records. That's what I say, Steve. The heckler emerges, but it was a positive heckle. I don't know what to say about this. Julius's historian Tom Bernardin has been working to record and celebrate Julius's history for decades. On April 21st of this year, Tom and Helen helped spearhead, along with GVSHP and New York City LGBT Historic Sites Project, a commemoration of the sip-in, where all also called for landmark designations of the site. GVSHP is proud to honor Julius's for preserving and celebrating the heritage of one of New York's oldest bars, one of the true pioneers of LGBT civil rights. Accepting the award are Helen Buford and bar historian Tom Bernardin.
Oh, my goodness, thank you. I want to say from the bottom of my heart how much I appreciate this award. And I promised I would not get emotional, but I think it's getting the best of me. But I wanted to say thank you very much to the GVSHP for this honor. As the other lady here spoke about how she works, and it's a thankless job, and you don't get any awards for it. I'm so honored to receive this, and so glad to be a part of the community and to have a part in maintaining it so that the history lives on for future generations to learn about the civil rights of the gay community and how important it is that if you know history, you don't let it repeat. And in light of all the events that have been happening this weekend, I want to say that we should not be separated. We should all be united, whether we're gay, straight, black, white, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, atheist. We all have to stick together, because if we are divided, we are easily conquered, and so therefore we should stick together for the cause and have everyone have the freedoms that this great country offers. Again, thank you very much, and happy weekend.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm beyond delighted. Greenwich Village has been very, very good to me. Beginning in 1972, when I would go to Margot Gale's apartment at 44 West 9th Street. I have to mention Margot Gale. I'm sure a lot of you knew her. And one could not have asked for a better mentor. Around that time, I started to go to Julius's. And it was welcoming back then. You know, as a young kid, it was just a dream to create an identity and to be around gay people, to help define your identity and your life and to point you in the right direction. As a matter of fact, Bob, I think that's around the time you and I met there. I think we did. Yeah, and you know, you never called me back, and I thought we had a good time. Jeepers, funny, we should meet here, huh? At any rate, folks, I now live in the Village for a very long time, within walking distance to Julius's, and I'm just so blessed to have this wonderful establishment to go to and to be around such intelligent, interesting, diverse, crazy, wonderful people, and to come full circle with the efforts of the sip-in, that these guys are still alive as young men. They had the courage to say, I am a homosexual. And believe you me, that does not come easy. Thank you all very, very much.
Beautiful, John. Thanks all very much.
I couldn't resist, Bob.
Beautiful. Thank you, Helen and Tom. They really said it for all of us, you know. Thanks so much. Regina Kellerman was GVSHP's first executive director. She was an architectural historian and passionate preservationist. Her work laid the foundation for the designation of several of New York City's first historic districts and individual landmarks. We honor her each year by awarding a Village Award for a significant contribution to the field of preservation. The winner of the 2016 Regina Kellerman Award for Outstanding Preservation and the final award of the evening, Let the Parties Begin, is a grassroots, or at least go have dinner, is a grassroots organization formed to face a threat to one of our historic districts. GVHSP is proud to bestow the Regina Kellerman Award upon Save Gansevoort, an organization that follows in the long tradition of Greenwich Village activism. Save Gansevoort was formed quickly in response to the threat posed by plans to demolish, replace, and build on top of several historic buildings in the Gansevoort Market Historic District. The group is led by longtime West Village activists, but mobilized and brought in a broad cross-section of the community, from longtime residents to newcomers, to fight the developers' plan to drastically alter the historic block of Gansevoort Street between Washington and Greenwich Streets. Save Gansevoort played a key role in informing the public about the proposal and helping to formulate a response. They helped inform their members about meetings and hearings and what they could do to affect the process. They worked with other neighborhood organizations to form strategies in response to the development and the developers' arguments in favor, including extensive research to rebut those arguments, reaching out to elected officials, and publicizing to the public the threat posed by the development. They masterfully used their website, Facebook, Twitter, and the online petition to engage and inform and to help shape the outcome of this battle. Even after the LPC provided initial feedback about the proposal, Save Gansevoort helped come up with shrewd strategies to push the LPC and hold them accountable to following their own stated directives to the applicant. Though the Landmarks Commission process ended far short of the mark in this case, it also ended in a much better place than it began, in no small part thanks to the work of Save Gansevoort. And the group is soldiering on, committed to working with GVSHP and other allies to respond to any attempt to change the restrictive declaration on these properties, which are likely essential to the project coming to fruition, for their dogged determination and inspiring leadership in fighting to preserve the historic character of the Meatpacking District and the West Village. The Regina Kellerman Award is given to Save Gansevoort. Accepting the award are lead organizers Zach Weinstein and Elaine Young. Come on down.
As I'm sure everybody here knows, the efforts of a group like this are completely dependent upon all the members of that group. And could I just briefly ask everybody here who's a member of Save Gansevoort just to stand up, because it's really the hard work of all the people involved who made whatever we accomplished possible. I'd also like to say something which I know is obvious to everybody here, but this fight and all of the other hundreds of fights that we have had over the decades to preserve the Greenwich Village, the historic character and everything of historic value in Greenwich Village would not be possible without the efforts of GVSHP. Every time another ridiculous, stupid, obnoxious project comes down the pike, the first thing we do is we go to GVSHP, we make sure that they know about it, or more likely they've come to us to make sure we know about it. They help us with strategy, they help us with resources, they help us with information, they help us with the electeds. It could not be done without their help, and we are extremely grateful for it. This award is bittersweet, as I'm sure people here know. I think we really did do an outstanding job of fighting this with everything that we had, but nonetheless, the decision is not what we wanted. And I think the one thing that I would take away from this is that under the current administration and under the current Landmarks Preservation Commission, what we have fought for in the creation of individual landmarks and landmark districts is truly under threat, because what this proposal represented was a transformation of the character of an entire block in the historic district, and although it's a lot better than it could have been, nonetheless, the transformation did go through, and it was permitted by landmarks, and it really does show the level of oversight that we're going to have to continue, and unfortunately, I have to say that GVSHP's got their work cut out for them, and they're going to need all the help that they can get. Other than that, the fight continues. As has been mentioned, there's still a restrictive declaration on the property, and until and unless that is lifted, we are hopeful that this thing may not be economically viable and that we can...
Yay!
Yeah.
We heard it first here. Thank you.
And so stay tuned. The fight continues.
Thank you for that, Corey. We're not going to have to call you tomorrow. That was the next thing on our mutual schedule here. I just want to say one thing. You know, we all worked very hard to make this happen, and I would say the group was comprised, and there were people in and out of it, but probably comprised of about 12 to 13 people, including 2 guys in California who put together social media sites, Twitter and Instagram and all the other ones, to help us get our message out. But I have to say that without the leadership of Zach, who's like your last Renaissance person, who can do almost anything, you call him up and say, Zach, we need help on this, and within a day, he's already figured out how to do whatever that is. So I really think Zach, who is in a way obsessive, much to our benefit, really deserves a special applause for what he's given to this. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach and Elaine. Thank you, Save Gansvoort. Well, that's it. You guys are terrific, and of course, and you can feel it here, the reality of humanity, which makes the village, and which keeps the struggle ongoing. You never win, but boy, can you live. So thank you all very much. On stage, off stage, backstage, around stage. Let's hear for the awardees of the 2016 Village Awards. And it's been an honor to be your host. Thank you so much.